Hi guys, our easy to follow maths video today is trigonometry SOHCAHTOA when we're trying to find a side. So if we're using the sine ratio, sine, which is signified by S there, is the opposite side divided by the hypotenuse. So if you wish to find the opposite side, put your finger over the O for opposite, and it's telling you that the opposite is the sine of the angle multiplied by the hypotenuse. In algebra, when you've got two letters next to each other, that denotes multiplication. So it's the hypotenuse multiplied by the sine of the angle. If you were to being asked to find the hypotenuse, put your finger over the H, and the hypotenuse will be given to us by the opposite side divided by the sine of the angle. So that's how we use the little SOH triangle. So here's our example. We're trying to find x, which is the opposite side. So we put our finger over the O for opposite, and it tells us it's the hypotenuse times sine of the angle. So that's 25 times by sine 55, and that's our answer. Here in example 2, once again, we're trying to find the hypotenuse this time. So we put our finger over the H for hypotenuse, and that tells us it's the opposite side divided by sine of the angle. Remember, S stands for sine of the angle. So the opposite side, which is 9, divided by sine of the angle, which is sine 28, and that gives us our length for x of 19.2 to 1 decimal place. Similarly, we have a triangle for the cosine ratio, and it's important that we get the letters in the right place when using the triangles C, A, and H. If we want to find the adjacent, put your finger over the A for adjacent, and that's the hypotenuse times by the cosine of the angle, or cosine of the angle times hypotenuse. But on your calculators, I would type in the hypotenuse first and then times by cosine of the angle. If you want to find the hypotenuse, put your finger over the H, and the hypotenuse will be adjacent divided by cosine of the angle. A for adjacent divided by C cosine of the angle. And if we're using the tangent ratio, if you're finding the opposite side, put your finger over the O, and then that will be tangent times by the adjacent, though in your calculator type it in as the adjacent times by tan of the angle. And if you're finding the adjacent side, put your finger over the A, and the adjacent will be the opposite divided by tan of the angle. So in this question here, first of all, we need to work out which ratio we're using. Well, the two sides are opposite and adjacent, so that's the tangent ratio. So that's our tan triangle up here that we're going to use. We're trying to find the adjacent side, x. So we put our finger over A for adjacent, and the triangle tells us it's opposite divided by tan of the angle. And therefore that will be 8 divided by tan 30. And there's our answer, rounded to 1 decimal place. In this example, we need to identify which ratio we're going to use. So we've got the adjacent side, and we're trying to find the hypotenuse. So that's the cosine ratio. As I said, we're trying to find the hypotenuse, so we put our finger over the H for hypotenuse. And our little triangle tells us we want the adjacent side divided by cosine of the angle. We put our values in. 14 is the adjacent, cosine 43 degrees. Tap that into our calculator, and that's 19.1 to 1 decimal place.